So, good evening. Here we are, our weekly Facebook Live, where we share one of our beers with you each week. And we've got a beer today, one of our most popular beers, probably one of our two best sellers. And the second beer, number 2, is Billericay Blonde. There you have it. Now, you notice on there that I've solved the problem with the writing, so you can read that this time. Billericay Blonde. Yeah, people, it was annoying me as well, the writing being back to front, and people saying, oh, you've got to do it in a mirror. I was like, I can't be bothered to do it in a mirror and then have to hold the camera doing that. But I looked it up, and in the settings you can actually get it so it flips round. So it is a bit confusing sometimes that this will be the right way round. I'll perhaps be moving things the wrong way, but there you go. Number 2, Billericay Blonde. Boring point there. Some people call Billericay Blondie. Just a bit of linguistics here. Blonde beer is a term for Belgian beers, blonde beers, and of course the French blonde beer in la bière is in French. It's feminine, so the blonde has an E at the end, so we call Billericay Blonde. You don't say blondie. No, people want to call it that. That's fine. So anyway, let's crack on. Okay, there we go. So let's pour our Billericay Blonde. So pour a nice, and it's a nice clear golden ale. Pour it nicely, a nice bit of condition there. Nicely there. Okay. Remember that thing, leave that last little bit in the bottle. You've got the little bit of sediment in there, and we'll be talking about that a little while, what that is. So there's our Billericay Blonde. Okay, you notice in one of my favourite glasses from the Pig's Ear Beer Festival back in 2006. Used to be a regularly at Stratford Town Hall. It's moved around a little bit. Hackney, I think it was at the Dolphin in the middle of Hackney when this was on. It stopped for a few years at Stratford Town Hall. It returned to here, and now it's in the Round Chapel in Hackney as well. So East London's beer festival, Pig's Ear, rhyme and slang for beer, of course, not rhyme and slang. So that was, and their glass is always absolutely fantastic. The designs on them. So let's get on with the beer. So nice floral smell. And the main thing about this one, of course, is that it's lovely and refreshing. We sometimes call this an entry beer for the people you want to convert to an ale drinker, because you can see it's a light one. Someone who's perhaps used to drinking lager will readily drink this. So we always sort of say, if people are having a mix of drinkers, or ale drinkers and lager drinkers, we will suggest they get Billericay Blonde, so it will appeal to both styles of people, but it might then convert those lager drinkers to actually get something that's got a little bit of flavour to it, to eventually become an ale drinker. So let's just talk about what makes this up. So it's actually based on a Mayflower Gold recipe. It's the same malts in there and the same hops and the same yeast, but at only 4% alcohol compared to Mayflower Gold being 6.5%, and it hasn't got as many hops in there as Mayflower Gold. So malts, you've got pale malt and a little bit of caramel, and remember the caramel gives it a little bit more body, a little bit more flavour, and it doesn't make it so it's totally pale, so it's not so it's got a little bit of colour to it, with goldness into it there. And then hops wise, get a mixture of British hops and American hops. British hops, Pilgrim in the bitterness, so it's got a nice bitterness to it, so you actually do get a nice bitterness on there in the finish. And then the hops, those American hops, Willamette and Cascade, so a nice citrusy aroma to it. So yeah, this time of the year, getting warmer, lovely refreshing beer. We've got bottles of that. They are selling out fairly quickly, but we'll be brewing it again probably next week, and we've got polypins of that as well available. So one of our most popular beers, appeals to absolutely everyone. So it's a really good, let's say, entry level beer. Lovely refreshment. But still got a really good flavour to it. There's a lovely floral hop aroma from those American hops, and the Pilgrim gives it a really good bitterness to it. So after you've swallowed that, yeah, packs a little punch of that bitterness at the end, a real good, nice bitterness in the finish. Okay, so Billericay Blonde, we of course had to call it, we got the blonde for, of course, Essex Blonde were famous at the time, so we named it of that. We had to have a nice Essex Blonde, Billericay Blonde. I think Essex Blonde, I think someone else beaten it to that one, but Billericay Blonde we had as our first one there. And of course, soon after we opened up, oh God, I had a wasp there trying to after my beer, so it's gone now anyway. Soon after we opened up the shop, and I'd sort of started the company, we got our first employee at the company was our own Billericay Blonde, and those of you who come regularly to the shop in the background will remember Rose. So there's Rose. Well, remember her. You all know Rose is our lovely worker in the bar on a Saturday afternoon. She's our longest serving employee, been with us since 2013, so about 7 years now, getting off 7 years now she's been with us. Always cheers us up, always good for a laugh, and she's great at naming those beers for us. So that's a really early photo. Rose hasn't changed much there, she still looks as lovely as that and still as cheerful as that. And you'll notice in the background there's some original Billericay Blonde bottles there with the original label before we changed our branding. So yeah, so that's sort of our lovely Rose, who cheers us all up in the micropub and always gives us lots of laughs. And she comes up with some great names of beers. Mash Up Harry was hers, and there's been some others as well. So we always ask her for a name of a beer. We need a new beer. Okay, so that's a little bit about Billericay Blonde, the what we make of it, and where the name comes from. Okay, 4% lovely golden ale. So we've talked a little bit about our brew and our beers. We talked last week a little bit about doing the mash and how we do mashing the malt and we get the sugar out of it. And then when we get the sugar, we put the hops in. The hops give the bitterness and the aroma, and then we add the magic ingredient. The magic ingredient is the yeast. Now, yeast, as we add it, so it just comes in a little packet like this. There's a yeast packet, and you'll see that we use dry yeast. So it's a dry yeast like that. Okay, so it's dry yeast like that. Yeast is actually a living thing, and my assistant is bringing along an example from one that I've made up earlier of saying what yeast does. Now that's yeast as we get it. It's dry yeast, so it's still living in there, but it's dry, so it's dormant there. So yeast, it's a single-celled organism. It's a little bit similar to a fungus, funnily enough. So what happens is that the yeast feeds on the sugar, and it, as a byproduct, produces carbon dioxide and it produces the alcohol. So it's a single-celled creature. When you first put it in, it multiplies rapidly, normally over that first 12 to 24 hours, and then after that, it starts feeding on the sugar, turning that sugar into carbon dioxide, which gives a nice condition to the beer, and alcohol, which of course we want that in the beer, don't we? Okay, so we use a dry yeast. There are some breweries around that actually, some of the more the older breweries that have actually got what's called a live yeast. So they serve it same way as you'd have sourdough bread, where you serve it, keep a little bit of that sourdough yeast that goes into your next loaf. Some of the older breweries actually, when they're brewing every day, now we can't brew every day. You need to be able to be brewing really every day to do this, and they take some of the yeast from each brew and then put it in the next brew. They harvest some of the yeast and look after it. Some of their yeast has been around for hundreds of years. There's actually sort of some of the older breweries, and they've actually even got what's called a yeast bank where they keep the that strain of yeast. And so some particularly older breweries, they've got a particular flavour that comes from their own yeast. Okay, maybe one day we'll have that, but I think we'll have to be brewing a bit more regularly to that. So yeah, that's what we add it in there like that. As we make up a starter, we mix that in with some water, hydrate it, and then it goes into our wort. Remember, our wort is the sugar solution that comes out of the malt, and then it starts fermenting. And as in true Blue Peter fashion, I made up a little yeast culture earlier, and if you look, there you go, it's fermenting away lovely. Yeah, you see all those bubbles on there. That's only been bubbling away in there about 6 hours, I think, something like that. I did put an extra bit more sugar than we'd normally have in our yeast, in our wort, but yeah, so it's bubbling away there nicely, and yeah, good old yeasty smell there. I'm not sure if it tastes what it tastes like now. I might try it later, but there's not going to be a lot of alcohol in there yet. It's only just started to get work on there. So that's our magic ingredient, our yeast, and really yeast gives a fantastic complexity to the flavour of the beer. The main thing you say, it produces the sugar, it produces the alcohol, it produces the carbon dioxide, but it produces all those really special flavours in the beer. And changing the different types of yeast really changes the style of the beer. So a lot of people say, what's the difference between an ale and a lager? It's actually the difference in the yeast. There's one yeast, you got ale yeast and a lager yeast. Ale yeast ferments quickly, ferments at the top of the beer, and ferments at quite a warmish temperature, 20 to 25 degrees C. Lager yeast, it ferments at the bottom, ferments slower, sometimes takes about a month to actually ferment, whereas we can get our beer to ferment in about 5 days, so it's slower and a cooler temperature, normally around about 12 degrees for a lager yeast. So totally different yeast, and it's the yeast that describes the type of the beer. So that's our Billericay Blonde. Say, if you want to order some of that, get your orders in quickly. We'll supply bottles locally around the Billericay area, Brentwood, Hutton, probably as far as Chelmsford, Southend, Wickford, Rayleigh, Basildon, all those areas. If you're a bit further afield, then just ask. We might be able to go. We might be going there. So we can do bottles, and we can do our poly pins as well. Remember the bag and boxes. Get those orders in really quickly if you want them. Particularly if you want to enjoy those at the weekend. So, say we are still doing the deliveries. It's delivery only at the moment. We are getting ourselves ready for when the shop will be able to reopen. So that's going to be the first step along the way. Is probably going to do a collection service first of all. We'll let you know when that's going to be available, so you'll be able to pay on phone or pay online, and then we'll give you a collection slot when you can come and buy the beers and collect the beers before we then get into when we'll follow the guidelines really of when it's safe to open the shops, and making sure that obviously we keep all of you safe and our staff safe as well. So that we'll let you know of that. But at the moment we're still mainly doing the deliveries, and we'll carry on doing the deliveries even when the shop is back open again. Because I think lots of you have got really used to having your beer delivered onto your doorstep, which is fantastic if you want our beer back at home. So just leaves me to say cheers, enjoy the beer, enjoy the weather, and have a great weekend, keep safe, and cheers.